Before we begin, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. If you like my stories, please consider giving me like and subscribe. It means the whole world to me. Enjoy the stories, and I hope you get the scare you're looking for. The glow of the monitor was the only light in the cramped apartment, casting a pale blue hue across the room. Ethan sat hunched over his keyboard, the faint hum of his laptop's fan mixing with the distant wail of a siren outside. His fingers moved with purpose, tapping out commands in a terminal window that flickered with lines of code. He wasn't a hacker in the Hollywood sense, no sleek black hoodie or neon-lit penthouse, but he knew his way around systems. A self-taught coder with too much time and not enough money, he'd stumbled into the dark web out of curiosity and stayed for the challenge. It started innocently enough. A late-night dive into forums after a bad day at his dead-end tech support job. He'd found threads on onion routing, Tor browsers, and hidden marketplaces buried beneath layers of encryption. At first, it was just a game, poking around, seeing how far he could go without tripping over something dangerous. The dark web was a maze of contradictions, chaotic yet organized, lawless but governed by its own unspoken rules. Ethan learned quickly to avoid the obvious traps, sites peddling drugs, weapons, or worse. He wasn't here for that. He was here for the puzzle. Tonight, though, something felt different. He'd been chasing a lead for weeks, a whisper in a private chat room about a hidden archive. The rumors called it a digital vault, a repository of secrets, government files, corporate leaks, things people would kill to keep buried. Ethan didn't believe half the stories, but the idea of cracking something that big, something real, kept him up at night. He'd followed breadcrumbs across encrypted forums, piecing together cryptic posts from users who vanished as quickly as they appeared. Now, he was close. Too close. The terminal blinked as his script finished running. A single line of text appeared. An onion address, a string of random characters ending in onion. Ethan hesitated. He'd seen plenty of sketchy sites before, fake marketplaces, honeypots set up to snag careless users. But this felt heavier. The chat room had gone silent after the address was shared, the user who posted it disappearing without a trace. Ethan's cursor hovered over the link. He could walk away, shut down his laptop, and go back to his normal life. But normal was a slow death, endless shifts, troubleshooting printers for people who didn't care. He clicked. The Tor browser loaded slowly, the connection bouncing through nodes across the globe. The page that appeared was stark, just a black background with a single text box and a prompt, Enter key. No instructions, no hints. Ethan frowned. He hadn't expected a welcome mat, but this was bare even by dark web standards. He checked the forum again, scrolling through the thread for clues. One user had mentioned a key, a string of code hidden in a public blockchain. It had seemed like nonsense at the time, but Ethan had saved the details. He opened another window, pulling up a blockchain explorer, and started digging. Hours passed. The apartment grew colder, the radiator long since given up. Ethan barely noticed, his focus locked on the puzzle. He found the transaction in the blockchain, a tiny note embedded in the metadata, a 64-character string. He copied it, pasted it into the text box, and hit enter. The screen went black, then reloaded. A new page appeared, this one with a simple interface, a list of files, each labeled with cryptic titles like Project 17 or Echelon Override. His heart raced. This was it, the vault. He clicked on a file at random, labeled Blue Shift. A PDF loaded, pages of dense text interspersed with diagrams. Ethan skimmed it, his eyes catching phrases like quantum encryption and backdoor protocols. It was technical, way above his pay grade, but he recognized enough to know it was real. This wasn't some hacker's prank. It was a blueprint for something big, maybe military, maybe corporate. He downloaded the file to an encrypted USB drive, his hands shaking slightly. He wasn't sure what he'd do with it yet. Sell it, leak it, or just sit on it. But he knew it was dangerous. As the download finished, a chat window popped up on the screen. No username, no avatar, just a message. You're in, now what? Ethan froze. He hadn't expected interaction. The dark web was anonymous, but this felt personal. He typed back, keeping it vague. Just looking. What is this place? The response came instantly. You tell me. You found it. Ethan's stomach twisted. Whoever this was, they knew he was there. He disconnected his VPN, shut down the browser, and yanked the USB drive from his laptop. His instincts screamed at him to stop, but the files were already his. Sleep didn't come that night. Ethan lay on his lumpy mattress, staring at the ceiling, the USB drive burning a hole in his pocket. He'd crossed a line, and he knew it. The dark web wasn't just code and anonymity. It was a place where mistakes had consequences. He'd heard stories: hackers doxxed, accounts drained, people disappearing after poking around in the wrong corners. He told himself he'd be careful, that he'd cover his tracks. But the chat message haunted him. Someone had seen him. The next day, Ethan called in sick to work. He couldn't focus on anything but the files. He set up a virtual machine on his laptop, sandboxing the USB drive to keep it isolated. The Blue Shift file was just the start. The archive contained dozens of documents, each one more unsettling than the last. Reports on surveillance programs, schematics for drones, emails between people with no names but titles like director or operative. One file mentioned a project called Echelon, a name Ethan vaguely recalled from old conspiracy theories about global surveillance. He wasn't a tinfoil hat type, but this wasn't theory. It was evidence. He didn't notice the first signs of trouble until the evening. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email." Ethan's blood ran cold. He hadn't given his number to anyone, not even on the dark web. He opened his email on a burner account, one he used for anonymous logins. There was a single new message, no subject, no sender name. Just a line of text. "You took something. We want it back." Attached was a photo of his apartment building, taken from the street outside. Panic set in. Ethan's first thought was to destroy the USB drive, but that wouldn't erase what he'd seen. Whoever these people were, they knew where he lived. He checked his laptop, running diagnostics to see if he'd been compromised. His firewall was intact, his VPN logs clean, but that didn't mean much. The dark web was a playground for people who could bypass any defense. He thought about going to the police, but what would he say? That he'd broken into a secret archive and now someone was after him? He'd be laughed out of the station, or worse, arrested. He needed help, but he had no one to turn to. His friends were normies, coders who stuck to legal gigs, people who'd never touched Tor. The forums were too risky. Posting about this would paint a target on his back. He decided to go back to the archive to see if he could find out who was behind it. Maybe he could negotiate, offer to delete the files in exchange for being left alone. It was a long shot, but he was out of options. Reconnecting to the dark web felt like walking into a lion's den. The Onion address loaded, but the interface had changed. The file list was gone, replaced by a single message. "You have 48 hours. Return the data, or we come for you." Below it was a Bitcoin address and instructions to transfer the files via a dead drop on a specific server. Ethan's hands shook as he read it. This wasn't a game anymore. He spent the next day trying to trace the Bitcoin address, hoping to find a clue about who was behind the threat. Blockchain transactions were public, but the address led to a tangle of wallets, each one bouncing to another. Whoever these people were, they knew how to cover their tracks. Ethan's searches turned up nothing but dead ends. He considered uploading a dummy file to the dead drop, something to buy time, but he didn't trust that it would work. If they could find his apartment, they could tell if he was lying. By nightfall, he was exhausted, his eyes burning from staring at the screen. He hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. The apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in. Every creak of the floorboards made him jump. He kept the USB drive in his pocket, afraid to leave it anywhere. He knew he couldn't keep running. Whoever these people were, they had resources he couldn't match. He had to make a choice: give in or fight. Fighting meant going deeper. Ethan started digging into the files again, looking for anything he could use as leverage. One document stood out, a memo about a contingency protocol tied to Echelon. It described a kill switch, a way to shut down the entire system. If Echelon was what he thought it was, a global surveillance network, then this was a nuclear option. He didn't know who he could trust with it, but it was his only card to play. He drafted a message to the anonymous chat, attaching an encrypted snippet of the kill switch file. "I have this," he wrote. "Let me go, or I leak it." He hesitated before sending, knowing it could backfire, but he was cornered. He hit send and waited. The response came within minutes. "You're playing a dangerous game. Meet us. In person. 24 hours. They gave an address, a warehouse in an industrial part of town. Ethan's heart sank. A physical meeting was the last thing he wanted. He'd seen enough movies to know how this ended. Empty warehouses, shady deals, a bullet to the head. But he couldn't run forever. He encrypted the USB drive with a new key, hid it in a slit in his mattress, and made a plan. The warehouse was a rusted skeleton, surrounded by chain-link fences and broken streetlights. Ethan arrived early, scoping the place from a distance. He'd brought a burner phone and a cheap webcam, setting them up. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. He waited, his breath fogging in the cold night air, until a black van pulled up. Two men stepped out, dressed in plain clothes, but moving with the precision of professionals. They didn't bother with masks, which scared Ethan more than if they had. "You the guy?" one of them asked, his voice flat. Ethan nodded, his throat dry. "Where's the drive?" the man said. Ethan held up his phone, showing the encrypted file. "I didn't bring it. You let me walk. I give you the key, otherwise it goes public." The men exchanged a look. For a moment, Ethan thought they'd kill him right there. Then the leader smirked. "Smart, but you're not as clever as you think." They didn't take the phone. Instead, they handed him a card with a number. "Call this when you're ready to deal. Don't make us find you again." They left without another word, the van disappearing into the night. Ethan stood there shaking, the card clutched in his hand. He didn't know if he'd won or just delayed the inevitable. Back at his apartment, he called the number. A woman answered, her voice calm but cold. "You've got guts," she said, "but you're in over your head. Send the key and we'll consider letting you live." Ethan didn't trust her, but he sent a partial key, enough to prove he had the files, but not enough to unlock them. It was a gamble, but he was still alive. Days turned into weeks. Ethan didn't hear from them again, but he never felt safe. He moved apartments, changed his number, wiped his digital footprint as best he could. The USB drive stayed hidden, a ticking bomb he couldn't bring himself to destroy. He stopped accessing the dark web, deleted his Tor browser, and swore off forums. But the files haunted him. He knew too much, and someone out there knew he knew. Ethan went back to his job, fixing printers and answering emails. But he was different now. He saw shadows where there were none, checked his locks twice before bed. The dark web had been a puzzle, a thrill, but it had taken something from him. He wasn't sure what. His innocence, his nerve, maybe both. All he knew was that he'd never be free of it. The archive was still out there, waiting for the next curious soul to stumble across it. And Ethan, for better or worse, was no longer just a bystander. He was part of the game now, whether he liked it or not. I always thought I was just another bored tech guy who liked to poke around where I didn't belong. I wasn't a hacker or anything, not in the Hollywood sense. I couldn't write code that brought down governments, but I knew enough to get myself into places most people didn't know existed. It started with curiosity. It always does. At first, the dark web felt like a rumor, something whispered in forums with screenshots no one could confirm. I'd seen enough stories to know there was danger, but I didn't believe most of it. I didn't think it was real. I mean, how could it be? Hitmen for hire, black market surgeries, live torture streams. It all sounded like some horror movie nonsense. Urban legends for people who wanted to feel edgy online. But then I found a site. It didn't have a flashy interface, just a black screen, white text, and a single login prompt. No links, no name, no instructions. I tried every handle and password I'd ever used. Nothing worked. A week passed. Then one day when I visited it again, the screen changed. The prompt said, "You have been noticed." That should have been the first red flag. I stared at it for a while. I didn't even remember typing anything the last time. Then a new message appeared. "We see your interest. Do you wish to observe?" There was no yes or no button, just a blinking cursor. I typed yes. The screen flickered, then loaded a new interface. It looked like a message board. Nothing extraordinary at first. Threads with innocuous names like Market, Live Feed, Requests, and Library. I clicked Library first. It was full of text files. Some fiction, some reports, some that looked like research or manuals, but the content was off. Stories about people being buried alive in remote fields. Detailed reports of surveillance tactics on civilians. Manuals on erasure, the term they used for killing someone and wiping out every trace of them. The tone was always calm, cold, clinical. It wasn't the writing that disturbed me. It was the feeling that these weren't stories. They were logs. I spent a few days reading. I didn't download anything, just scrolled through. Curiosity had turned into a quiet dread that pressed against my chest. But I couldn't stop. I justified it to myself, told myself I was researching for a novel I'd never write, that I was just browsing, not engaging. Then I clicked on live feed. There were no thumbnails, just text, a list of names. Not usernames, real names, hundreds of them. Most were grayed out, but one was green. I clicked on it. A black screen loaded, then a shaky camera feed appeared. Night vision. It looked like a bedroom, small, cramped. A woman slept on a mattress on the floor. A baby was curled next to her. The camera was inside the room, hidden somewhere high in the corner. The feed had no sound. I stared for a long time, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. I left the page. But the image wouldn't leave me. I checked back the next night. Same room, same woman, same baby. But this time, the door was open and a figure stood there, motionless, watching. I closed the laptop. For a week, I didn't go back. I thought about it constantly. I didn't even know who to tell. What would I say? That I was spying on someone through a website I couldn't explain, watching her sleep while someone stood in her doorway? Eventually, I convinced myself it had to be fake. A performance, like a haunted house dream for twisted people. The rational part of my mind needed to believe that. So I went back. This time there were more green names on the list. I clicked on another, a man sitting in his living room, smoking. Camera was angled through the vent in the ceiling. Another feed showed a couple arguing in their kitchen. The audio was still off, but you could tell by the body language the frustration in their faces. All of it looked too real to be fake, too mundane, too quiet, like real life, not a show. I clicked back to the first woman. She wasn't there anymore. The room was empty. The mattress was gone. No baby, no furniture, just stained walls and a flickering bulb. I refreshed the page. Nothing changed. A message appeared in the chat window. I hadn't noticed there was a chat before. One user posted a single word, erased. That was the moment I should have stopped, disconnected, wiped my drive and walked away. But I didn't. Instead, I clicked on requests. It was what it sounded like, a forum where users posted requests for things, information, surveillance, interventions. That's what they called hits, interventions. Most threads had no replies. A few had bids. One user asked for footage of his cheating wife. Another wanted a permanent solution for a neighbor. One asked if someone could arrange an accident for a coworker. One thread had a reply from someone named Handler. All it said was, accepted. Observation begins. That same day, under the live feed, a new name appeared. I recognized the name. It matched the coworker mentioned in the request. When I clicked on it, the man was walking down a city street, earbuds in, coffee in hand. The camera was inside a parked car tracking him. It followed him for days. Then, one day, the camera view was from behind a pair of gloves. The man was getting into his car. He sat down. A gloved hand reached up under his dashboard. The feed cut to black. A chat message appeared. Intervention complete. I felt sick. I didn't sleep. I started covering my own webcams, running anti-spyware scans, changing passwords. I stopped logging into the site, but it didn't matter, because they had noticed me. A week later, I got an email from an address with no name, no subject, just a single line in the body. Why did you stop watching? Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A picture. It was my apartment building taken from the street. Then another. My front door. Then my bedroom window. Then a photo of me, sitting at my desk, reading the email. I froze. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know who to call. The police? What would I tell them? That I was browsing the dark web and pissed off some secret voyeuristic murder club? I started seeing things out of place. My door unlocked when I was sure I'd locked it. My toothbrush moved. My computer mouse facing the wrong direction. I began unplugging everything at night. I put tape over every lens, but I still felt watched. Then I got another email. Observer becomes subject. I didn't leave my apartment for days. I barely ate. I watched every shadow, every car parked outside too long. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia. I wanted it to be. One night, I got a knock on the door. I didn't answer. Minutes later, I got another photo on my phone. It was my hallway, outside my door. Empty. Then the lights went out. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and backed into the corner of my living room. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Live feed begins. I looked at my laptop. The screen was on. I hadn't touched it. It showed me a camera feed of me in the corner, clutching the knife, wild-eyed and shaking. I looked up at the ceiling, searching. I didn't see a lens, but it was there. The chat filled with users, dozens of them. Names I didn't recognize. Comments scrolled by. Look at him. Fight or flight? How long before he breaks? I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't look away from the screen. Then the camera shifted. It was coming closer, moving from above down toward my level. It wasn't just a feed. It was someone's eyes, someone holding the camera, someone in the room. I turned. No one was there. The screen blinked. The feed went black. Then a message appeared. You are ready. I don't remember what happened after that. Not clearly. I remember waking up in my bed the next day. Everything was where it had always been. No sign of intrusion, no photos on my phone, no mysterious emails. I checked the site. The login page was gone. The URL led nowhere. But I wasn't the same. I didn't trust anything anymore. Not lights, not locks, not silence. I moved cities, changed jobs, got a new laptop, never touched the dark web again. But sometimes, when I walk down a street or sit alone in a cafe, I catch someone watching. Just for a second. A stranger, eyes locked on mine, before looking away. And I wonder, am I still being watched? Or worse, am I still watching? The room was dim, lit only by the faint glow of a laptop screen. Sarah sat at her cluttered desk, surrounded by empty coffee mugs and stacks of unpaid bills. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitant but driven by a restless curiosity. She wasn't a hacker, not really, just a bored IT technician who'd spent too many nights scrolling through obscure corners of the internet. Her job fixing servers for a faceless corporation paid the rent, barely, but left her craving something more. That's how she found the dark web, a whispered rumor in a tech forum, a hidden world accessible through a browser she'd downloaded on a whim. At first, it was a thrill. The dark web was a labyrinth of encrypted sites, some mundane, others unsettling. Sarah stuck to the edges, browsing forums where coders swapped tips on bypassing firewalls or debated the ethics of anonymity. She avoided the marketplaces peddling illegal goods. Those were too risky, too real. For her, it was about the challenge, the puzzle of navigating a space where rules didn't apply. She taught herself to use Tor, learned to mask her IP, and kept her tracks clean. But curiosity has a way of pulling you deeper, and Sarah was no exception. It started with a post in a private chat room, one she'd spent weeks earning access to by proving her coding skills. The message was cryptic, buried in a thread about abandoned servers. The library is real. Find the key, and it's yours. No one elaborated, but the term library kept popping up, a myth among the forum's veterans. Some said it was a hoax, a trap for naive newbies. Others claimed it was a digital fortress, a collection of files too dangerous to exist on the surface web, leaked government reports, corporate secrets, data that could topple powerful people. Sarah didn't believe the hype, but the idea gnawed at her. She wanted to know. She spent nights chasing leads, piecing together fragments from deleted posts and encrypted chats. The dark web was a place of ghosts. Users appeared, dropped hints, then vanished. Sarah learned to save everything, storing screenshots on an encrypted drive she kept in a locked drawer. After weeks of dead ends, she found it, a string of code hidden in an image file on a forgotten server. Steganography, she realized, a trick to conceal data within data. She extracted the code and ran it through a decoder. It spat out an onion address, a portal to the library. Her heart pounded as she typed the address into her Tor browser. The connection was slow, bouncing through layers of encryption across the globe. When the page loaded, it was disappointingly plain. A black screen with a single input field labeled key. No instructions, no hints. Sarah cursed under her breath. She'd come too far to hit a wall now. She dug through her notes, cross-referencing the code she'd found. One line stood out, a 32-character hash buried in the image's metadata. She entered it and hit submit. The screen flickered, then loaded a new page. A directory appeared listing files with titles like Operation 42 and Protocol 0. Sarah's breath caught. This was the library. She clicked on a file labeled Red Wire. It was a PDF, pages of redacted text mixed with technical schematics. She skimmed it, catching phrases like surveillance grid and autonomous systems. It was dense, far beyond her expertise, but she knew it was significant. This wasn't a prank. She downloaded the file to her encrypted drive, her hands trembling. She wasn't sure what she'd do with it. Expose it, sell it, or just keep it as proof she'd cracked the puzzle. But she couldn't stop now. As the download finished, a chat window opened on the screen. No name, no profile, just a message. You found it. Now what? Sarah froze. She hadn't expected contact. The dark web was supposed to be anonymous, a place where you could hide. She typed back, keeping it neutral. Just exploring. What's this about? The reply came fast. You're in deep now. Be careful. The window closed and the site logged her out. Sarah's stomach churned. She shut her laptop and paced the apartment, checking the locks on her door. She told herself it was nothing, just some hacker messing with her. But the message felt personal, like someone was watching. She didn't sleep that night, her mind racing with possibilities. Had she tripped an alert? Was her system compromised? She ran scans, checked her firewall, and found nothing. Still, the unease lingered. The next day, she couldn't focus at work. Her cubicle felt suffocating, the hum of fluorescent lights grating on her nerves. She kept the encrypted drive in her pocket, afraid to leave it at home. During her lunch break, she checked her burner email, one she used only for dark web logins. A new message waited. No sender, no subject. You took something. We want it back. Attached was a photo of her apartment building, taken from across the street. Her blood ran cold. She hadn't given anyone her address. She'd been careful. VPNs, Tor, no personal details. But somehow they knew. She left work early, her mind a blur of panic. Back home, she triple-checked her system for malware, finding nothing. She considered destroying the drive, smashing it with a hammer and forgetting the whole thing. But that wouldn't erase what she'd seen, or the fact that someone had her in their sights. She needed to know who they were, what they wanted. Against her better judgment, she went back to the dark web. The Onion address still worked, but the site had changed. The file directory was gone, replaced by a single message. Return the data, 48 hours. Below it was a Bitcoin address and instructions for a dead drop, a server where she could upload the files anonymously. Sarah's hands shook as she read it. This wasn't a game anymore. She thought about going to the police, but what could she say? She'd broken into a hidden archive, stolen data she didn't fully understand. They'd arrest her before they believed her. She spent the next day trying to trace the Bitcoin address, hoping to find a clue about her pursuers. The blockchain was a maze, transactions bouncing between wallets with no clear origin. Whoever these people were, they were professionals. Sarah's searches turned up nothing but dead ends. She considered uploading a fake file to buy time, but if they could find her apartment, they'd know if she was bluffing. She was trapped. By night, exhaustion set in. She hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. Her apartment felt like a cage, every noise outside her window a threat. She kept the drive in her pocket, its weight a constant reminder of her mistake. She knew she couldn't keep running. Whoever was after her had resources she couldn't match. She had to make a choice. Give in or push back. Pushing back meant going deeper. Sarah opened the Red Wire file again, searching for anything she could use. One section caught her eye, a report on a fail-safe mechanism tied to a system called Gridlock. The details were vague, but it described a way to disable a network of surveillance nodes. If Gridlock was what she thought, a global monitoring system, then this was a weapon. She didn't know who she could trust with it, but it was her only leverage. She reopened the chat on the library site, attaching a snippet of the fail-safe file. "I have this," she wrote. "Leave me alone, or I leak it." She hesitated, knowing she was escalating things, but she was out of options. She sent the message and waited, her heart pounding. The reply came in seconds. Bold move. Meet us. 24 hours. They gave an address, a storage facility on the edge of town. Sarah's stomach dropped. A physical meeting was a nightmare scenario. She'd read enough to know how these things ended. Empty lots, shady deals, no witnesses. But running wasn't an option either. She encrypted the drive with a new key, hid it in a hollowed-out book, and made a plan. The storage facility was a maze of rusted units, lit by flickering sodium lights. Sarah arrived early, her nerves on edge. She'd brought a cheap burner phone and a small camera, setting them up to record from a hidden spot. It wasn't much, but it was something. She waited in the shadows, her breath shallow, until a car pulled up. Two men stepped out, dressed in plain jackets but moving with purpose. They didn't bother hiding their faces, which scared her more than if they had. "You the one?" one of them asked, his voice low. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "Where's the drive?" he said. She held up her phone, showing the encrypted file. "I didn't bring it. You let me go. I give you the key. Otherwise it goes public." The men exchanged a glance. For a moment, she thought they'd grab her then and there. Then the taller one nodded. "You're smart, but not smart enough." They didn't take the phone. Instead, they handed her a slip of paper with a number. "Call this when you're ready to deal. Don't make us come back." They left, the car's taillights fading into the night. Sarah stood frozen, the paper clutched in her hand. She didn't know if she'd won or just bought time. Back home, she called the number. A man answered, his tone calm but sharp. "You've got nerve," he said. "Send the key and we might let you walk." Sarah didn't trust him, but she sent a partial key, enough to prove she had the data but not enough to unlock it. It was a desperate move, but she was still breathing. Weeks passed. The threat stopped, but Sarah never felt safe. She moved to a new apartment, changed her email, and deleted her Tor browser. The drive stayed hidden, a secret she couldn't unlearn. She went back to her job, configuring servers and answering emails. But she was different now. She jumped at shadows, checked her locks obsessively. The dark web had been a puzzle, a rush, but it had changed her. She'd seen too much, knew too much. The library was still out there, waiting for the next person to find it. And Sarah, whether she wanted to or not, was part of its story now. The night was thick with silence, broken only by the faint hum of a laptop in a cramped, dimly lit apartment. Daniel sat hunched over the keyboard, eyes scanning lines of code and hidden directories. The glow from the screen was the only light in the room, reflecting off the cracked walls and peeling paint. Outside, the city slept unaware of the shadows growing beneath its surface. Daniel had stumbled into the dark web almost by accident, a place whispered about in hushed tones but rarely understood. It wasn't the usual curiosity that pulled him deeper, but a gnawing need, something he could neither explain nor resist. At first, it had been small, harmless dives into encrypted chat rooms, marketplaces selling banned books, encrypted messaging boards. But that night, something changed. He was searching for something specific, something that promised answers. There had been rumors, stories of people disappearing from the surface world, only to reappear on the dark web's labyrinthine forums, their identities erased, replaced by chilling myths. Some called it the Void, others the Black Maze, a place where lost souls wandered, trapped by secrets they wished they never sought. Daniel didn't believe in ghosts or myths, but he needed to know what had happened to his brother. His brother Michael had vanished without a trace months ago. The police had long given up, chalking it up to a runaway or worse, but Daniel refused to accept it. Michael had been involved in something dangerous, and the dark web was the only lead Daniel had. The screen flickered as he clicked deeper into a hidden directory. The interface was crude, almost archaic, but beneath it was a vast repository of files, conversations, and encrypted data. Suddenly, a message popped up on the side of the screen. "Looking for answers?" Daniel's fingers froze over the keyboard. The message wasn't addressed to anyone in particular, but it felt personal. He typed back, voice trembling in the quiet room. "Yes, I'm looking for someone, my brother." There was a pause, then a response. "Follow the thread, but beware. Once you enter, there's no turning back." He hesitated, but then clicked on a link embedded in the message. The screen loaded slowly, revealing a chat room filled with fragmented conversations, cryptic symbols, and fragmented warnings. Users with anonymous handles exchanged coded phrases. One message caught Daniel's eye, a post about a place called The Hollow. The Hollow was described as a digital black site, an archive of forbidden knowledge and lost souls. According to the chatter, those who ventured there often lost their grip on reality. But somewhere in that digital abyss might lie the truth about Michael. Daniel took a deep breath and entered the Hollow. The website loaded, dark and oppressive. The layout was minimal, just a black background with shifting white text, almost like a heartbeat or a pulse. There were files to download, videos with distorted images and text logs that seemed to jump erratically from one topic to another. One file caught his attention. It was titled simply The Vanishing. He clicked on it. The file opened to a transcript of a conversation between two users, talking about disappearances linked to a shadowy figure known only as the Collector. According to the transcript, the Collector was a presence that preyed on those who sought forbidden knowledge, pulling them into the digital abyss and erasing their existence from the real world. Daniel's heart pounded. Could this be connected to Michael? The more he read, the deeper the story grew. Accounts of people lured into traps, digital prisons from which escape was impossible. The line between virtual and physical blurred. Suddenly his screen flickered and went black. Panic surged through him. He tapped keys frantically, but the screen remained dead. Then, after a moment, a message appeared, slowly typing out in white letters on the dark screen. Do you wish to join us? Daniel's fingers hovered above the keyboard. The question felt like a test, a gateway. Without thinking, he typed back, Yes. The room seemed to pulse, the walls of his apartment melting into shadows. His screen blinked back to life, displaying a single image, a photograph of Michael, looking tired but alive, standing in an unknown room with no windows. Below the photo, a message, Find the door. Daniel's breath caught. The photograph was clearly taken inside a building, but he had no idea where. His mind raced through possibilities until one name surfaced. An abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a place Michael had once mentioned in passing. He grabbed his coat and left the apartment, the chill of the night air biting at his skin. The streets were deserted, the city's usual hum replaced by an eerie stillness. As he approached the warehouse, a strange sensation washed over him, a mixture of dread and anticipation. The warehouse loomed before him, its broken windows and rusted doors like the skeleton of a forgotten giant. Daniel pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and decay. His footsteps echoed as he moved deeper into the cavernous space. Suddenly, a door appeared at the far end, one that hadn't been there moments before, or so it seemed. He approached cautiously, hand trembling as he reached for the handle. The door opened silently, revealing a narrow corridor lit by flickering fluorescent lights. Inside, the walls were lined with screens showing faces, hundreds of them frozen in moments of fear, confusion, or despair. Among them, Daniel spotted one that made his blood run cold. Michael's face. Michael was alive but trapped in some digital limbo, his eyes pleading for help. Daniel's phone buzzed. A message popped up on the screen. You want to save him? Follow the rules. The rules were simple but brutal. Complete the challenges, uncover the secrets, but never look back or hesitate. Each failure meant losing a part of himself, memories, sanity, perhaps even life. The first challenge was a riddle encoded in a series of images and sounds, something that required not only intellect but instinct. Daniel solved it, feeling a flicker of hope as one screen went dark and a new one lit up. But with every challenge, the weight in his chest grew heavier. He began to question what was real. Voices whispered from the shadows, tempting him to give up, to forget, to join the void. The final test was the most harrowing. Daniel was forced to confront a version of himself, twisted and dark, a reflection of his fears and regrets. The room twisted around him, memories bleeding together, the lost moments with Michael, the guilt of not being there, the fear of losing everything. In that moment, Daniel understood what the Collector truly was, a manifestation of despair, feeding on those who could not let go. Summoning every ounce of strength, Daniel refused to surrender. He shattered the illusion, breaking the chains of the digital prison. The screens flickered and went dark. Michael's image appeared once more, this time smiling faintly. You found me, Michael whispered, his voice weak but real. Together, they escaped the warehouse as dawn crept over the city. The dark web had tried to claim Daniel, but he had fought back, and in doing so, He had brought his brother back from the edge of oblivion. But as they walked away, Daniel knew the darkness was never truly gone. It lingered, waiting for the next lost soul to wander into its depths, hungry for secrets, hungry for fear. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of the digital world, the collector watched and waited. The rain hammered down relentlessly, turning the city streets into rivers of mud and glass. In a small, cluttered apartment on the edge of town, Mark sat alone, the faint glow of his computer screen the only light cutting through the darkness. Outside, thunder rumbled distantly, but inside the silence was heavier than the storm. Mark had always been curious about the darker corners of the internet. What began as a vague fascination with anonymity and forbidden knowledge had quickly spiraled into obsession. The dark web was a labyrinth of hidden marketplaces, secret forums, and whispers of things better left unseen. Tonight, he had decided to dive deeper than ever before. His fingers danced over the keyboard, navigating encrypted portals and untraceable networks. He had been warned. The dark web was a place where curiosity could come at a terrible cost, where some doors once opened could never be closed. But Mark didn't care. He was chasing a story, a mystery he had stumbled upon days ago. The rumors had been sparse at first, users speaking in hushed tones about a site called The Mirror. It was said that The Mirror was unlike any other dark web domain, a place where the boundary between the digital and the real blurred, where visitors faced reflections of their darkest fears and secrets. Some who entered never returned, and those who did were never the same. Mark's breath quickened as he found the hidden gateway to The Mirror. The site opened with a stark black background and a single line of white text that flickered like a heartbeat. "Look into me." He hesitated, his heart pounding. The screen shimmered, and suddenly his own face stared back at him, pale and tired in the dim light. But something was wrong. The reflection didn't mimic his movements perfectly. The eyes held a coldness he did not recognize, an emptiness that sent a chill crawling down his spine. Curiosity warred with fear. He typed into the prompt, "What is this place?" The reply was instant. "We show you what you hide." Mark's screen went black. Then, images flooded in, snippets of his life he had never shared, moments of shame and regret buried deep in memory. A face from his past he had tried to forget appeared, then vanished into static. He tried to close the browser, but his mouse wouldn't move. Panic clawed at his chest. A new message appeared. "Do you want to see more?" Against every instinct, he typed yes. The room around him seemed to darken, the shadows thickening as if the very air was being sucked into the screen. The mirror began to reveal more. His fears, his failures, his secrets laid bare with merciless clarity. It was as if the site was pulling him inside, stripping away the layers of his identity. Mark's phone vibrated violently on the desk, though he hadn't heard it ring before. A text appeared. Unknown number. "You can't hide anymore." His hands trembled as he tried to shut down the computer. The screen flickered, showing a new image. A figure standing in the corner of his apartment, cloaked in darkness, featureless, but unmistakably there. He spun around, but the room was empty. The reflection in the screen smiled, a slow, cruel smile that did not reach the eyes. Mark backed away, tripping over a chair. The lights flickered and died, plunging him into complete darkness. The only sound was the soft, steady tapping of fingernails against the window pane, even though the rain outside had stopped. Desperation pushed him to grab his phone, but the screen was filled with static. Then the words appeared, carved into the glass as if by invisible fingers. "Look deeper." Against his better judgment, Mark turned back to the computer. The screen had changed. Now it showed a doorway, an entrance into a shadowed corridor. From the screen came a faint whisper, a voice that echoed inside his mind. "Come inside." He reached out, his fingers brushing the cold glass of the monitor. Suddenly, a coldness spread through his body, a numbness that pulled him forward. His vision blurred, and when it cleared, he was no longer in his apartment. The corridor stretched endlessly before him, walls made of shifting shadows that seemed to breathe. The air was thick with a metallic scent, like blood and rust. Somewhere in the distance, a low moan echoed, drawing him onward. Mark's footsteps echoed as he walked, each step heavier than the last. The whispers grew louder, voices telling him things he had never admitted to himself, truths he had buried beneath layers of denial. Faces appeared in the shadows, twisted, contorted reflections of people he knew, distorted by pain and fear. Ahead, a door appeared, old and splintered, its surface carved with symbols that seemed to writhe and pulse. Mark reached out, fingers brushing the rough wood. The door creaked open to reveal a small room bathed in sickly green light. Inside, a chair sat in the center, strapped with thick leather bands. A screen flickered on the far wall, displaying a live feed of his own terrified face from the apartment. Behind him, the shadowy figure was closing in. The door slammed shut behind Mark, locking him inside. The whispers turned to laughter, cold and cruel. The mirror was no longer just a sight. It was a trap, a prison for the souls of those who dared look too deeply. Mark struggled against the bindings, but the leather held fast, cutting into his wrists. The screen showed his reflection morphing, his features twisting into a mask of terror and despair. A voice filled the room, low and guttural. "You cannot leave until you accept what you hide." Memories assaulted Mark, failures, betrayals, moments of cruelty he had denied. The shadow in the room moved closer, its presence suffocating. It whispered secrets in his ear, promises of release if only he would give in. But somewhere deep inside, a spark of defiance remained. Mark closed his eyes and forced himself to remember who he was, not the man of fear and guilt, but the man who had loved, who had fought, who had hoped. The bindings loosened. The screen shattered into 1,000 pieces, the green light dying instantly. The door creaked open. Mark stumbled out into the corridor, breath ragged. The shadows recoiled as he passed, dissolving into nothingness. He ran blindly, the moans fading behind him. At last, he burst through a door of light, collapsing onto a cold floor. His apartment greeted him with silence and darkness. The rain had stopped, the storm had passed, but Mark knew the darkness had not left him. The mirror was still out there, waiting for the next curious soul, ready to pull them into the abyss. And now it had his name. Thank you for listening. Hope I didn't scare you too much. If you like my stories, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. See you next time.